Let me tell you how a suitcase and a secret turned everything upside down. Picture it. I'm standing at the edge of a life I built, right in the doorway, suitcase in hand, while my son Derek stands like a wall I can't pass, arms folded, wearing that smug expression like he's just unlocked the universe and now I'm the fool for not seeing it. Behind him, Tanya, his wife, quiet but glowing like someone who finally won a long game. Their house, once filled with roast chicken, laughter, and scraped knees on Sunday afternoons, suddenly feels airless like a tomb sealed in daylight. "You should have told us, Ma," Derek says, trying to make it sound like an intervention instead of an eviction. "You've been living off us, doing nothing," and Tanya doesn't miss a beat. "We've got our own kids to raise. We can't keep carrying you." Derek just nods like it's gospel. Not a word about the motel rooms I scrubbed to send him to college, or the dinners I skipped so he'd never feel hunger. That's family for you. They enter your story halfway through and act like they've read the whole book. So I left. No tears, no drama. Just the lonely sound of the door clicking shut behind me, echoing like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I didn't get to write. I pulled my suitcase over cracked sidewalks, past the rose bush I planted the day Derek was born, to a cold iron bench 3 blocks away, 72 years behind me, but a far heavier ache pressing down on my chest. And here's the thing no one knew. I wasn't fired from the church. I walked away because the doctor warned me that one more food box and my back would snap like dry wood. The church begged me to stay, but I knew when to bow out with grace. I never told them about the pain. Never wanted to worry them. Never wanted to be a burden. Funny, isn't it? I gave Derek the house, trusted his promise to take care of me always, but forever. Turns out that can spoil faster than a carton of milk. And here's where it all changes. Because what they didn't see, what was zipped up tight in that suitcase, wasn't just clothes or memories. It was a secret, one big enough to rewrite everything. 34 years ago, when my husband died in that brutal work accident, we got a modest insurance payout. Nothing grand. But buried deep in the paperwork was a deed to some forgotten patch of land way out in the sticks. Just dirt and thorns. Everyone said to sell it, and God knows I thought about it every time I scraped by with oatmeal for dinner just to cover the taxes, year after year. But I held on. Then last fall, out of nowhere, this young man in a shiny suit knocks on my door, tells me a solar company's buying up everything out there for some massive green project. The number he offered made my knees go soft. I didn't get flashy. Wired the whole thing into a trust at my church in my husband's name, quiet as a whisper. To the world, I was still poor old Martha with a frayed purse and secondhand shoes. But tucked beside my tissues was a little card with access to $1.4 million. Yeah, that happened. I spent my first night not in some 5-star hotel, but in a shelter, because I wanted to sit with people who understood what it means to lose. Things that mattered. I shared what I had, listened, laughed, handed out kindness like spare change. The next morning, I walked to a rundown cottage on the edge of town, roof caving in, weeds up to my knees, but the bones were strong. I paid in full, had it restored in 3 weeks under the name Grace Holdings. No one knew it was me. I didn't want payback, just a quiet place where nobody got thrown away. That was the dream. Real, simple, human. Meanwhile, Derek's world began unraveling like a cheap sweater. The house I'd signed over, gone to foreclosure. He jumped job to job, warehouses, odd gigs, even tried reselling sneakers online. The debt crushed him. The marriage cracked. Tanya took the boys and left. Then one day, rock bottom found him sitting on a cot in a buddy's basement, staring at a flyer from the library. Martha's Table, hot meals, shelter, support for families in need. My name. Bold and clear. Something in him must have shifted, because the next morning he was at my door. The cottage had been painted. Sunflowers swayed out front, and a little hand-carved sign welcomed him home. Inside, it smelled like fresh bread and a second chance. He stepped inside, and for the first time in years, I saw not the man hardened by life, but my little boy, lost, worn down, and searching. "Mama," he whispered, and something in my chest almost gave out. We sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around warm mugs, the silence soft but heavy. "This place, it's yours?" he asked, eyes scanning every corner like I might be hiding some other twist. I nodded. "I thought you had nothing," he said. I smiled. "I had peace, and enough." He looked into his coffee, then asked why I never told him about the money. "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. He didn't answer, and in that quiet, The truth settled between us like dust in sunlight. I told him I needed to see who stayed when I had nothing left to give. Because that's how you know who's worth building for. That's when the tears came. I was awful to you, Mama. I reached across the table, wrapped my hand around his. You lost yourself for a while. Doesn't mean you can't find your way back. And from that day forward, he showed up every morning. Fixed the wobbly chairs, painted the fence, helped serve meals at Martha's table. Slowly, he wasn't just rebuilding a life. He was rebuilding us. Every Friday, we sat on the porch at sunset, watching the kids run through the yard, no words needed. One evening, I handed him an envelope. Inside was the old deed to the house and a voided check from the land sale framed. You don't owe me a thing, I told him. But now you know what happens when love comes before pride. And that's when I saw it. Not just the son I raised, but a man who finally saw me. Not just as his mother, but as someone who had built something real from nothing but grit and grace. Years passed. And when I finally left this world, there was no grand farewell, no limo-lined procession, just people from every walk of life. Folks from the shelter, teachers, kids holding sunflowers, all sharing stories of Mama Martha, the woman who gave more than she ever took. Derek stood there in his apron, hands trembling, and said, "She left with nothing, but she built more than any of us could see. She didn't just feed us, she forgave us." Behind him, the sign still hung above the door. The doors that close behind you can't match the ones you open for others. And maybe that's what sticks. The idea that no matter how many times life slams a door in your face, you still get to choose whether you open one for someone else. Now, before you scroll away, tell me honestly, what would you have done in Derek's shoes? Does forgiveness really fix the broken parts? Or are some wounds too deep? Pride or love? Revenge or second chances? That's the real story, isn't it? The messy, beautiful truth of being human.